"Get off my property, Karen," I shouted, blocking her SUV with my body. She slammed her car door, red-faced and shaking with fury. "You think you can deny me access? This is a public easement." "It's a private ranch road, ma'am," I said calmly, trying not to escalate things. "The sign says it, the gate says it, and the law says it too." Her eyes bulged. "I'll call the cops, you'll be sorry." I crossed my arms. "Go ahead." She did. Right there on the dirt road, wearing her big sun hat and oversized sunglasses like she was on some soap opera, she whipped out her phone and dialed 911. I could hear every word. "Yes, I'm being threatened on a public road. This man is harassing me and blocking access." I didn't move. I just stood there while she kept yelling fake details into the phone. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that the person who would get that call was my wife, Chief Danielle Harper, head of police for the entire county and one of the highest-ranking law enforcement officials in Texas. And when Karen saw who stepped out of that black patrol SUV later that day, she turned white as snow. But before we get there, let me tell you how this all started. Hi y'all, I'm James Harper. I own a 200-acre ranch in Texas, passed down to me by my grandfather. The land is rich with history and cattle. My ranch isn't part of any HOA, but the neighborhood nearby, mostly made up of brand new cookie-cutter houses and residents who wear matching workout outfits just to walk their poodles, has always been trying to act like they control my land. I let most things slide. I'm not the confrontational type. I love nature, mind my cows, fix fences, and wave at strangers. But ever since Karen moved in 2 months ago, things started to go sideways. Now, before we dive deeper, let me introduce the people in this story. Karen Turner, HOA board member. Mid-50s, platinum blonde bob haircut. Walks like she owns every sidewalk she steps on. Loves filing complaints, even if it's about birds chirping too loud. Danielle Harper, my wife. 42, confident, kind, but doesn't take nonsense. She's been in law enforcement for over 20 years and currently heads the police department in the county. She's respected by everyone, except Karen, of course, who's never met her until the day she made that call. Me, I'm James, 45, and I've lived on this ranch my whole life. Grew up chasing goats, baling hay, and fixing tractors. I don't do drama. But if you back me into a corner, I'll fight fair and firm. Now here's how it all began. It started with a letter in my mailbox, no return address, just a plain envelope with typed words on HOA stationery. "Dear Mr. Harper," it read, "this is a notice from the Whispering Pines HOA requesting your cooperation in allowing members limited vehicle access through your southern ranch road, which would shorten school commutes and reduce neighborhood traffic. Kindly remove the gate to allow access. Your cooperation is expected." Expected? I laughed. I even took the letter to Danielle, who nearly spit out her coffee reading it. "They think they can demand access to private land that's not even in the HOA?" she asked. "I guess so. Let them try." I replied to the letter politely, stating that the road was on private land and had no legal connection to the HOA. I also included a copy of the county's land survey and boundary documents to prove it. I didn't hear back for 2 weeks. I thought maybe that was the end of it. Boy, was I wrong. Karen didn't write again. She showed up. I was out near the stables when I saw her BMW SUV driving slowly along the southern fence line. She was stopping, taking pictures, and even pointing to the fence like she was doing a property inspection. I walked up to the gate. "Ma'am, this is private land," I said. She stuck her head out the window and smiled like she was doing me a favor. "Yes, and we're kindly asking to use it." "I already responded to your letter." "That wasn't a request. That was a courtesy notice," she snapped. "Well, I'm telling you again, no access." She narrowed her eyes. "You'll hear from our legal team." The next week, I got another notice. This time it said I was obstructing neighborhood development plans. I called the county. They confirmed there were no such plans and that my land was fully outside HOA jurisdiction. That's when things got weird. Karen started driving down to the ranch entrance daily, just sitting there for 10 minutes watching, sometimes with binoculars. One morning I found footprints near the gate and broken twigs like someone had tried climbing over the fence. I checked my trail cam footage. It was Karen. She had trespassed. That was the final straw. I reinforced the gate, put up more cameras, posted clear signage that read, "Private ranch, no access. Trespassers will be prosecuted." 2 days later, I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel. I looked up. Karen's SUV again. This time she drove past the mailbox right up to the gate and started honking. I walked out with my dog Max trailing me. I was calm. She stepped out of her car, stormed to the gate, and screamed, "You can't keep me out, I have HOA rights." I shook my head. "This is Texas, ma'am. You don't have squat on my land." That's when she pulled out her phone and dialed 911, shouting loud enough for the whole prairie to hear. "He's threatening me, blocking a public road. I feel unsafe," Max barked. I patted his head and told him it was okay. Karen was pacing now. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. I didn't respond. I just waited. Because I knew exactly who'd answer that call. My wife. What happened next? Well, let's just say, when Danielle rolled up in her marked SUV, wearing her full chief uniform and sunglasses, stepping out slow and calm with her badge glinting in the sun, Karen froze like a deer in headlights. But that's not even the worst part. Danielle took one look at the situation, then looked at me. Then she turned to Karen and said, "Is this the woman who's been harassing my husband?" Karen stuttered. "Your husband?" Danielle nodded slowly, arms crossed. But what happened next? That changed everything. And Karen? She wasn't ready for what was coming. Karen took a step back like she had just seen a ghost. Her mouth dropped open. She blinked at Danielle, then at me, then back at Danielle again. You're his wife?" she whispered, her voice suddenly small. Danielle gave a slow, measured nod. "Danielle Harper, Chief of Police, Waller County. And you just made a false emergency call. On record." Karen's face twisted. No, I didn't know. I mean, he was threatening me. I watched the footage live on our private security feed." Danielle cut in, pointing up at the camera on the fence post. "And I'm very familiar with the property boundaries. You're on our land, ma'am. That's trespassing and a false report." Karen began stammering, spinning in a circle like she was trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. "Wait, you're not going to arrest me, are you? I didn't mean to call the police. I felt unsafe." Danielle stepped closer, calm, firm. "No one threatened you, no one touched you. You're being filmed and everything is documented, including the last 2 months of harassment. So now I have to decide if we handle this my way or the legal way." Karen gasped. "You wouldn't dare." Danielle raised a brow. "Try me." I stayed quiet through all this. Watching Karen squirm was more satisfying than I expected. But what Danielle did next surprised even me. She reached into her vest and pulled out a pen and a citation pad. Karen's eyes widened. No, this isn't happening. You've trespassed multiple times. That's criminal. But today you called 911 with a false report. That's a felony in Texas. I suggest you call your lawyer." Karen's face flushed, then paled. Can we talk this out? Maybe have coffee?" "I didn't mean to. This is all just a big misunderstanding." Danielle tore the citation off the pad and handed it to her. "I suggest you stop trespassing and stop trying to use this ranch as a shortcut to your HOA clubhouse. If you come near this property again, we'll press full charges." Karen snatched the paper, climbed into her car, and slammed the door so hard it rattled her side mirror. She peeled out of the driveway in a puff of dust, nearly hitting a cactus on the way out. Danielle turned to me and sighed. "Think she got the message?" "I think she's still trying to figure out how I married a police chief," I said with a grin. Danielle laughed and wrapped an arm around my waist. "Well, that was a Monday." But it didn't end there. 2 days later, I found an anonymous flyer taped to my ranch gate. It read, "Beware of the Harpers. They are bullying local residents and hiding behind a badge." It was printed on HOA letterhead. I showed it to Danielle. "They're not done?" She nodded, serious now. "Okay, they want war?" I blinked. "You're sure?" Danielle gave me a tight smile. "Let's play then. The legal way." We went down to the county building and pulled every document connected to Whispering Pines HOA. Danielle knew all the right questions to ask. And that's when we discovered something juicy. Whispering Pines HOA didn't actually have the legal right to enforce any restrictions beyond their own plotted development. The land survey showed a 100-foot natural buffer zone between their properties and mine, which meant their claim about a public easement across my ranch. Completely fake. And the best part? Karen's house. Yeah, it was actually built half an inch over her legal property line, right into that buffer zone. Danielle looked at the paperwork, then at me. "You thinking what I'm thinking? Boundary dispute?" "Oh yeah," she said. "Let's go big." That night, we had dinner quietly on the back porch, grilled ribs, cornbread, and sweet tea. I tried to relax. Danielle reminded me not to let the nonsense ruin my peace. Bullies like Karen only win if you let them live rent-free in your head. I nodded. She was right. But the next morning, things exploded again. I was checking the barn water line when I heard Max barking. I stepped outside and saw dust kicking up down the trail. It was Karen's SUV again. And this time, she had 2 HOA board members with her. One man holding a clipboard, another woman with a camera. I walked up to the gate. "Don't even think about stepping foot on my land." Karen smirked. "We're conducting a neighborhood survey." "You're not in a neighborhood," I said flatly. "We'll see about that," said the woman with the camera, snapping photos of my no trespassing signs and Max barking through the gate. Karen raised her voice. "This land is meant for shared community access. We're giving you one more chance to cooperate." I narrowed my eyes. "Or what?" Karen didn't answer, but the guy with the clipboard muttered something about filing an injunction. I laughed. "You're going to file an injunction on land you don't own?" Karen gritted her teeth. "We'll see what the county says." I raised a brow. "You mean the same county where my wife is the top cop?" Karen's smirk faded again. Her hand twitched on her car keys. Then Danielle pulled up. She stepped out calmly and called out, "Trespassing. Again." Karen threw up her hands. "We're on the road. This is public space." "Nope," Danielle replied. "This entire stretch from the cattle gate to the oak tree back there is private ranch road. We have the land documents ready to prove it. You're all officially warned." The man with the clipboard tried to speak up. "We're not causing trouble." Danielle held up a hand. "Sir, I suggest you step back before you say something stupid." They left, but not quietly. Karen shouted as she drove away, "You'll be hearing from our lawyers." Danielle looked at me. "We might need to tighten security." I nodded. "And maybe alert the sheriff's office." She smiled. "Already did. They're on standby." We thought that would be the last straw, but Karen, she had one more move up her sleeve. 3 days later, I woke up to find my mailbox smashed to pieces, and painted across my driveway in red spray paint were the words, "This isn't over." I froze. Max growled beside me, and I knew. Karen had officially crossed the line, and she was about to find out exactly what happens when you mess with a rancher, and his wife, the chief of police in Texas. I stood there staring at the red spray-painted letters on my driveway, my fists clenched at my sides. This isn't over. Max was barking like mad, pacing the edge of the yard. The smell of the paint was still strong, which meant whoever did this came in the middle of the night. Danielle came out in her bathrobe holding a cup of coffee, her badge still hanging from the kitchen hook behind her. She looked down at the driveway, then at me. "Well, now it's vandalism." I nodded slowly. "She's getting bold." Danielle didn't speak. She took a long sip from her cup, then turned and went back into the house. A few minutes later, she came back out, this time dressed in full uniform. No nonsense. All business. "Let's go," she said. "We're filing charges. And this time, it's going public." I followed her inside and watched her open her laptop, pull up the footage from our security cameras, and sure enough, there it was. Karen, in a hoodie. At 2:37 a.m., she pulled up in her SUV with the headlights off, crept up the driveway, smashed our mailbox with a bat, then crouched and spray-painted the words right across the gravel. She didn't even wear gloves. "Clear as day," Danielle said, clicking through the zoomed-in frames. "That's a felony, criminal mischief, property damage, trespassing, and a threat." "Are you going to arrest her?" Danielle gave a sly smile. "No. I'm going to file a report and let the sheriff's deputy pick her up. I'm too close to this. Conflict of interest." A few hours later, a deputy from the sheriff's department showed up, reviewed the footage, and asked if we wanted to press charges. We did. The deputy headed out to Whispering Pines. Less than 30 minutes later, we got a call. Karen had fainted on her front lawn when they showed up with the warrant. Apparently, she started screaming about conspiracies and how she was being targeted by the police and harassed for being a concerned citizen. Concerned citizen, my foot. The deputy called us later with an update. "She's trying to spin it as mental stress," he said. "Cried about being bullied, asked for her lawyer." Danielle nodded. "Let her lawyer see the footage. Let them try to explain spray painting a threat at 2 a.m. For a few days after the warrant, things were quiet, eerily quiet. No more SUV circling the ranch, no more anonymous letters, no HOA goons with clipboards. I thought maybe, just maybe, it was finally over. But one afternoon, as I was loading hay into the back of the pickup, I heard voices near the back fence. Max perked up. I walked slowly toward the sound. What I saw made me stop cold. Karen, in the backwoods, with a group of 5 men I didn't recognize. They had tools, shovels, axes, and a measuring wheel. One of them was marking trees with orange spray paint. I stepped out from behind the oak tree and shouted, "Hey!" They all froze. Karen turned slowly. "Oh," she said, not even flinching. "Didn't think you'd be back here today." I marched over, boiling. "You're on my land again with contractors?" "Surveyors," she said coolly. "I filed a community development request. You'll be getting a formal notice soon." I blinked. "You did what?" "I told the HOA you were blocking access to shared land, so we're redrawing property lines. I hired these men to map it." "You don't own an inch of this land," I growled. She smiled sweetly. "Not yet." The men started backing up. "Ma'am," one of them said, "you didn't say this was private property." "She's lying," I told them. "I've got the deeds and survey on file with the county. You step over that fence and it's trespassing." Karen stepped closer, glaring. "You're going to regret making an enemy of me." I locked eyes with her. "No, Karen. You're going to regret waking a sleeping lion." I pulled out my phone, called Danielle. "Karen, backwoods, brought surveyors, trying to mark trees on our land." Danielle's voice was flat. "I'm on my way." Karen's face changed when she heard me say Danielle's name. 10 minutes later, Danielle arrived in an unmarked cruiser, this time with a second sheriff's deputy. She handed over documents, proof of land ownership, official plat maps, and the footage from our drone that had been recording since Karen stepped foot beyond the fence. "Gentlemen," Danielle said to the surveyors, "you've been lied to. You're trespassing on private land. I suggest you leave right now before we're forced to press charges." They packed up fast, but Karen stayed rooted. "You can't scare me," she said, voice trembling now. "I have rights." Danielle stepped closer, inches from her face. "And I have a badge. Keep pushing, Karen. You've already got charges pending. You want a full arrest? You want this in court? You want your HOA exposed in front of a judge?" Karen looked away, That night, as Danielle and I sat on the porch, she said quietly, "I think she's unraveling." The segment aired that same evening, and folks, we weren't ready for what came next. The clip went viral. Not just locally, statewide. Emails flooded in from people across Texas saying they'd dealt with similar HOA nightmares. Veterans, ranchers, single moms. One woman from El Paso wrote, "Thank you for standing up. I lost my land because I didn't know my rights. But you've inspired me." Even Danielle's old academy instructors called to say how proud they were. But the part that made us laugh the hardest? Karen's HOA board fired her the next day. Turns out she'd never told them about the legal complaints, the citations, or even that she was under police investigation. When they saw the news piece, the board panicked. We got a formal letter from Whispering Pines the next morning. "Dear Mr. and Mrs. Harper, we, the HOA Board of Whispering Pines, do not condone the actions of Ms. Karen Turner. We are severing her from all HOA duties effective immediately. We apologize for any undue stress this situation may have caused. Respectfully, HOA Board of Whispering Pines." Danielle read it and snorted. Too little, too late. "Should we accept the apology?" I asked. She thought for a moment. "Let's not start a war, but let's make sure they never forget we ended it." Still, we knew Karen. She wasn't the type to fade into the background quietly. 3 days passed. No Karen sightings, no drive-bys, no complaints. But on the 4th day, Danielle got a call from dispatch. The officer on the line sounded confused. "Chief, we just got a call from a hospital in Austin. There's a patient here claiming she was attacked by you." Danielle raised an eyebrow. "What?" "They say her name is Karen Turner. She's saying you stormed her house in the middle of the night and broke her wrist." Danielle turned to me, eyes narrowing. "She's pulling a stunt." "She's not even in our county," the officer added. "The hospital's running checks, but we thought you should know." "Thanks," Danielle said. "Let me guess. No witnesses?" "None." Danielle hung up and sighed. This woman's desperate. I asked, "What can she even get out of that?" She looked at me. "Attention, sympathy, maybe a civil suit." "Will it hold?" "Not if we push back hard." That night we compiled everything. Not just the footage, but every police report. Danielle called in a favor from an old friend at the Texas Attorney General's office. "Karen wants to play games across counties," she said. "Let's take it statewide." But before Danielle could finish filing the counter-complaint, we got a surprise visitor. It was 8:45 p.m. Max barked twice and stood at attention. I stepped outside with a flashlight. A black SUV rolled slowly into our driveway. It wasn't a sheriff, it wasn't media, and it definitely wasn't a neighbor. The back door opened, and Karen stepped out. Alone. No makeup. Hair a mess. Left wrist wrapped in a brace. Her face was pale and drawn. She looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "I just want to talk," she said quietly, hands raised. I didn't move. "This is trespassing, again. I won't come any closer, please." Danielle stepped out behind me, hand on her sidearm, not drawn, just ready. Her voice was firm. "Why are you here, Karen?" Karen looked between us, shaking. "Because I messed up. I didn't think you'd fight back. No one ever has." Danielle's eyes narrowed. "You lied, called in a fake injury report, had contractors marking trees on our land. You vandalized my husband's driveway." Karen nodded slowly. "I know, I thought if I could get through to you tonight, before it all comes down." She didn't finish the sentence. Danielle crossed her arms. "Before what comes down?" Karen looked up and said something that stopped both of us cold. "There's a bigger plan coming. The HOA has new leadership now, and they're about to do something worse than anything I ever did." We stood frozen. And then she said it. "They're coming for your land. Tomorrow." For a long second, Danielle and I didn't speak. We just stood there under the porch light trying to process what Karen had just said. She looked down at her shoes like a child caught lying, except this time, she wasn't lying. Her voice was shaking, but there was no drama in it, just fear. Danielle stepped forward slowly, never taking her eyes off Karen. "Explain, now." Karen sighed, wrapping her arms around herself. "After the board removed me, I thought I was done. I even started seeing a therapist. But the vice president, Douglas Crane, he stepped in as interim president." I raised an eyebrow. "Douglas? The retired real estate guy with the mustache and the 'Don't tread on me' flag?" Karen nodded quickly. "That's him. He's not just stepping in, he's taking over, and he hates both of you. He's always wanted to expand the HOA's reach. He thinks your ranch land is the only thing standing in the way of a new gated development project they're planning. He told the board he's filing a claim of community interest with the zoning office tomorrow morning." Danielle stiffened. "That's illegal. They can't file a claim against a private ranch outside the HOA boundaries. That land isn't zoned for community use." Karen nodded. "He doesn't care. He's betting you won't respond fast enough. If he gets that claim approved, even temporarily, he can petition to have your private road declared a shared use easement." I laughed bitterly. That same road they've been drooling over since last summer. Karen looked up. "I know you hate me, but I came here to warn you. Because I started this whole mess, and I want to end it." Danielle didn't reply at first. Then she stepped back and motioned toward the driveway. "Get in your car, Karen, and don't come back." Karen hesitated. "I just thought, we are freezing all filings from Whispering Pines HOA until an internal review is complete." I exhaled in relief. Danielle nodded slowly. "Thank you, Commissioner." "Don't thank me," he said. "Thank your wife. She came prepared." We returned to the ranch that afternoon feeling like we'd finally won. The land was safe. The HOA had been stopped. But as we drove up to the main gate, we saw something strange. A man in a hard hat and yellow vest standing on the side of the road, next to a surveying truck, measuring equipment in hand. I parked the truck and got out. "Hey," I called. "Can I help you?" The man looked startled. "Oh, sorry, sir, I was just doing a contract job. Got a request from Whispering Pines HOA. Said they owned this fence line now." Danielle stepped out behind me, calm but firm. "They lied, and you're trespassing." The man's eyes went wide. I didn't know. I'll go right now." He packed his gear and drove off in minutes. Danielle watched him leave, her arms folded. "They're still trying," I said. "They will," she replied, "until someone higher than the zoning office gets involved." I frowned. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" She gave me a hard look. "Yes," she said. "It's time to take this federal." When Danielle said federal, I knew things were about to get real. By now, we'd dealt with trespassing, vandalism, false police reports, a viral news story, and a rogue HOA board trying to muscle in on private land. But taking this federal? That was a whole new level. We spent the evening gathering everything, again. Danielle had binders sorted by color, one for property documentation, one for footage, one for correspondence, and one titled simply, Escalations. The next morning, we made our way to the U.S. Department of Agriculture's local rural land division, which oversaw ranching properties and land use conflicts tied to federal subsidies and conservation easements. We walked into the building around 9:01 a.m. It smelled like old paper and coffee. The clerk behind the desk blinked when Danielle flashed her badge and handed over the folders. "We're filing a formal complaint under the Rural Land Protection and Abuse of Zoning Process Act," Danielle said. "The HOA is attempting to seize influence over land that receives federal conservation credits." The clerk blinked. "Has there been a physical seizure?" "Not yet," Danielle said. "But they've attempted to manipulate local zoning, used intimidation tactics, and sent unlicensed contractors to measure the land illegally." The clerk nodded slowly. "We'll need to assign this to a regional officer. Are you available this afternoon? I'm available now, Danielle said. An hour later, we sat across from a man named Officer Glenn Harrow, mid-50s, with a silver goatee and the calm authority of someone who'd seen too many land disputes to be surprised by anything. He flipped through our documents, stopping to examine the drone photos and video stills. Your HOA really tried to play cowboy with county rules, didn't they? He muttered. Danielle nodded. And they picked the wrong ranch to mess with. Officer Harrow looked up. All right, here's what we'll do. I'll place a federal hold on any zoning petitions involving your property. If Whispering Pines submits anything, no matter how small, it'll trigger a federal audit. He paused. And just so you know, I used to be a rancher myself. This whole thing makes me sick. Danielle shook his hand. Thank you. We appreciate it. On the way back, I asked her, so what happens next? She replied, they're officially on a watch list. Any move they make will backfire, legally, publicly, permanently. But we weren't prepared for what came next. That evening, as we grilled some burgers and tried to enjoy a rare quiet sunset, I got a text from a neighbor, Tom, a retired firefighter who lived a mile up the dirt road. Did you see the Facebook post? Whispering Pines HOA is calling a community march across your ranch tomorrow. Says it's open to all residents and media invited. I nearly dropped my phone. Danielle read it over my shoulder. They're going to try to storm the land. She immediately got on the phone. First with the sheriff, then with a civil defense contact, then with our family lawyer. The sheriff said, you've got all the legal paperwork in order. If anyone crosses that fence tomorrow, they're fair game for trespassing charges. Deputies will be on standby. Danielle looked at me. They're trying to create a spectacle, paint us as tyrants, make us look like villains blocking public land. I clenched my jaw. What do we do? She walked over to the barn, came back holding an old wooden sign from her late father's property. She dusted it off and held it up. In bold black letters it read, Private Ranch, keep out, protected by law and God. We hung it right on the front gate, and then we waited. The next morning, the first car arrived at 10:15 a.m., then more. By 10:30 a.m., there were nearly 20 cars parked along the edge of the HOA development. Residents with picket signs, cameras, and matching We Are the Pines t-shirts. At 10:45 a.m., a silver SUV pulled up. Douglas Crane stepped out. Clean suit, designer glasses, thick mustache that twitched when he saw the news van pulling up behind him. Danielle, in full uniform, stood tall at the gate. Douglas walked right up to the property line, arms open like a politician giving a speech. Brothers and sisters, he called, we are here today to reclaim what was meant to be shared, for our children's safety, our commute times, and our future. People clapped. I stood behind Danielle, arms folded. Douglas pointed dramatically at us. And what do we have here? Two people trying to hoard land, refusing to cooperate, using intimidation and lies to hold back progress. Danielle didn't flinch. You're trespassing, turn around. But he wasn't done. I say we take one bold step forward, to show we are not afraid. People cheered. And that's when the first protester stepped over the line, then another, and another, 3 more. Danielle raised her hand. Stop right there. This is your final warning. You are trespassing on protected federal land. Cross again, and you will be arrested. A woman in a visor yelled, You can't arrest all of us. Then someone threw a rock. It landed near Max, who started barking like a siren. Danielle raised her radio. Sheriff, they've crossed the line, requesting immediate response. 3 squad cars pulled up from behind the barn, sheriff's deputies in full uniform, lights flashing. Douglas's face dropped. One officer shouted through a megaphone, This is an official order. Disperse immediately or face legal action. Chaos followed. People scattered like ants. Douglas tried to act calm, but 2 deputies approached him directly. Mr. Crane, one said, You're under arrest for organizing an unlawful assembly, trespassing, and violating multiple county ordinances. He stuttered. You can't. I'm a community leader. The deputy cuffed him. You're also a defendant now. We stood by as they loaded him into the back of the car. Danielle turned to the cameras. Let this be a lesson, she said loud and clear. Private land is protected in this country, and no title, no HOA badge, and no angry mob gives you the right to take what doesn't belong to you. And just when I thought it was over, a woman rushed up from the crowd crying, Karen. She looked me in the eye. I told you they were coming, she whispered. But then she said something else, something I hadn't expected. They weren't just coming for the land. They were coming for what's under it. The words, they were coming for what's under it, echoed in my ears like a thunderclap. I stared at Karen. What do you mean under it? She looked around nervously. The chaos from the protest was dying down. Officers guiding people back to their cars, news crews packing up. Karen stepped closer and dropped her voice to a whisper. I didn't know at first, she said, eyes darting. But when I was still on the HOA board, I overheard Douglas talking on the phone with some guy named Nate. They weren't just after your land to build a road. Then what? Danielle asked, stepping forward. Karen pulled a folded paper from her purse. There's an underground aquifer beneath your ranch, one of the last clean, untouched ones in this part of Texas. Douglas and some land developer filed quiet reports claiming that if they could reroute the water rights, they could bottle and sell it or even build a luxury resort. But they needed control of your property to tap it. I blinked. An aquifer? Karen nodded. They already sent out private surveyors. You remember those men who came with me that day in the woods? Only one was a real contractor. The rest were with a land investment company. I didn't realize it back then. But after they kicked me off the board, I started digging. Danielle took the paper from Karen's hand and studied it. Her eyes narrowed. This is a proposed hydro-zoning report. I looked over her shoulder. The report had diagrams of underground water flow, suggested drill points, and one chilling line near the top. Priority: secure surface rights to Harper Ranch by any legal or extra-legal means necessary. Danielle's lips tightened. They were going to steal not just the land, but the water under it. Karen nodded. And once that happens, they'll bleed the land dry. I stepped back, stunned. I'd always known my grandfather's land was special. The cattle thrived. The soil stayed rich year after year, even during droughts. But I never knew why. Now I did. Danielle handed the report to a sheriff's deputy. This needs to be entered into evidence. We're filing additional charges: attempted resource theft, zoning fraud, and conspiracy. The deputy nodded and radioed it in. Karen looked at me one more time. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I wanted to make it right. I didn't say a word. I just gave a small nod. Danielle stepped closer to her. You did the right thing. Late, but right. Karen turned and walked back toward the road alone, her figure fading into the dust of the retreating crowd. Back at the house that evening, Danielle and I sat in silence for a while. The sun dipped low, casting long orange shadows over the hills. Finally, she spoke. They were going to strip everything: the land, the water, your family's legacy. I nodded slowly. And they would have gotten away with it if we didn't fight. Danielle looked out over the ranch. You know what the saddest part is? What? They never saw the value in the life here. Just the profit. We didn't speak again for a while. 2 days later, the county held an emergency hearing. Danielle presented the documents. Karen testified. The zoning commissioner himself appeared with a formal statement. Whispering Pines HOA was officially fined $850,000 for illegal land assessments, trespassing, and zoning fraud. Douglas Crane was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, trespassing, and unlawful land surveying. But more importantly, The federal government issued a permanent conservation order on our land. That meant no HOA, no county office, no developer could ever alter, access, or claim any part of our property without express permission from the federal board. And the aquifer? Protected indefinitely. Marked as a natural heritage site. Reporters came and went. Lawyers sent notices and then retracted them. The HOA shrank in influence so fast you'd think their clubhouse had caught fire. Whispering Pines quietly replaced its entire board within the month. As for us, peace returned to the ranch. Danielle went back to her usual patrol work, balancing being a countywide law enforcer and my everyday hero. I returned to mending fences, tending to the cattle, and watching the sun rise each morning with a new sense of gratitude. We added a new sign at the front gate, just below the old one that read, "Protected by law and God." This one said, "This land is our legacy. You can't buy that." And if you're watching this from wherever you are across the U.S., tell us where you're tuning in from. Have you ever dealt with a crazy HOA? Drop your story in the comments below. And remember, not all battles are fought with fists. Some are won with truth, patience, and one very powerful woman who just so happens to be the head of police in Texas. We'll see you next time.